third time that you publish that landscape, and maybe a little spoiler what I can say, it keeps growing, right?
It does.
And with this, over to you guys.
Thank you. Does my mic work?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Can you hear us? Yeah, nice.
Next to me is Leo, who is the mastermind behind the circular economy startup landscape. And startup landscape means we've tried to chart all circular economy startups, and this time across Europe. How many circular economy startups do we have in Europe, Leo?
What is the audience guessing?
A guess?
Until 500. Who says more than 500? Okay, that's not bad. More than 1,000. That's good, that's good. More than 2,000. Okay, it's a bit over 2,500 startups that inherently are dealing with circular economy.
It's the biggest number ever. When Yannis just said circular economy is Europe's quest for competitiveness, that gives hope, and what happens in the startup sector also gives hope, and we think it comes for a reason. Because for many of those startups, circular economy is not just coming from an urge to fight a system, but really because they're addressing a resilience topic, they're addressing a nature and biodiversity topic, and also there's a massive talent streaming in that direction. Resilience, we've talked about a lot in the past 2 days. Every 1.4 years there is a severe geopolitical crisis with consequences where repair, recycle, reuse, and as-a-service startups just help and provide a solution. We realize that biodiversity is more and more coming in as a topic, and also a super large part of those startups is in the area of nature. We'll get to that in a little bit later. And still we see from US brain drain, but also from the super high share of female founders, that there is a very high talent concentration in circular economy startups, which for me is also a core reason why that area is especially growing. And now let's get to some analytics before we get into the landscape itself. Firstly, we look into funding, like $1 billion, and then we look a little bit more also into figures and sectors. On funding, overall venture capital into all kinds of startups, not only circular economy, all kinds of startups, the venture capital was developing in the past years mixed, I would say. That's the black curve. It was around 40 billion euros globally at the end of the 2010 years, went up to some 60 billion, then had a peak and is now back to some 60 billion US dollars of global venture capital invested into any kind of startups. And then on the right, different scale, circular economy funding, which you see is growing. When I entered the space of circular economy the first time in a serious way was 2018, 2019, there was 1 to 2 billion euros of circular economy funding. You can ask yourself, when did you enter the circular economy space? How much funding was there? Now it's almost 10 billion of circular economy funding. More than 10% of the global startup funding is going into the circular economy sector. It's still growing, and that was the title of this presentation, 30% year over year. And keep in mind the green curve, we're now making that one black and looking specifically into that circular economy funding. Where does it come from? Now the black curve is all circular economy funding. We neglect all the other startups, we're looking at circular economy right now. So we see it rising overall with a small dip in Europe after, or overall, when the wars started. 50% is coming from Europe. That's a massive figure, including Americas, including Asia, right? In which topic that you can imagine, AI, any other kind of boom topic in the startup field, could you say that 50%, almost 50% is coming from Europe? We had a panel yesterday where CEOs said that he has the feeling that Europe is really most prosperous around circularity, that here are the most startups. He's right, and now you all know the detailed figures behind it. Circular economy is something that's developing in Europe more stronger than anywhere else on the planet. And I believe it's partly coming from those drivers I mentioned in the beginning. For example, the resilience need, for example, the talent, and also the increasing level of insight, especially into the nature topic. And there are also different, now we're looking at the number of deals closed around different forms of startup financing, equity, grants, debts. It's growing along all dimensions, and that's very good news. Leo, especially the grant one is interesting, isn't it?
It is. We see something that happens around the year 2020, where the European Green Deal policies see the light of day for the first time. And we see that financing by grants is really increasing. That's something that we've seen in China and US earlier, right? Like these grantpreneurs, startups that really were able to scale because they get so much support from government agencies. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, so we just heard the call for more public procurement in terms to boost circularity. It's definitely a big one. But what we see also, grants do help. Maybe that's one still for a message for Aurel as well. Leo, your turn to get us a little bit deeper into the circular economy startup landscape now.
Yes, we had some fun with numbers in our landscape. So let's have a look at this one. It's this year's landscape. Some of you have seen it online already. What we see here is a very biased subset of the champions that are out there. Of course, our team has selected the logos. Of course, there are so much more champions out there that would be worthy of appearing here. But it's a start, and it gives some visibility to the space, and it's a attempt to structure it and sort of provide a stage. What is more important is this one, right? If you look at Europe, then we see that over 2,500 startups are thriving across Europe, and we had a look at all of them, and all of them have circular economy at their DNA. They're not also doing something circular. They not only use recycled inputs. They really work across one of these 6 categories, and we see. Yes, Matze.
Maybe it's worth to quickly repeat them. When we scouted for 2,600, 2,500 something startups, we applied this very specific definition, right? Circular inputs, doing something with regenerative materials, sharing and product as a service, product lifetime extension, enablers, specifically reverse logistics, but also digital platforms and resource recovery. It's really only those startups that count into the 2,500, and that's also how we defined it, right? So if you see a different figure somewhere else, someone else might have scouted for a keyword, circular economy or so. We scouted for what startups actually did.
Yeah, and that's why the number is so special, right? It's still 2,500 that sort of match that very strict definition. So what we did is we had a look at the number of startups in each country and the funding in each country. And there's something that is not really surprising. The 3 largest economies in Europe, they're leading the field by far, right? And that's great news. If you look at Germany, it's good to see that we're leading the field when it comes to circular economy startups. If we scale that down to a number per capita, and also scale the funding down per capita, then suddenly the picture, there is a different picture that is seen. What you see here is the Baltics and the Nordics are definitely the hidden stars and the rising stars in the field. And what is interesting, we talked about policies, right? How's the policy landscape in these countries? They were quite early, right, when it comes to adopting circular economy roadmaps and stuff.
I guess so, and also even more in customer awareness and also the talent topic here again. Who's from the Baltics or Scandinavia? Very good, you can be proud. So in terms of per capita, these countries are really leading.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting figures that we brought with us. We had a look at technologies that are employed. AI was a topic today already. We had a look which startups are really driven or have a business model that is really driven by AI, and not just a chatbot that's sort of enhancing the user experience, but which business models are not possible without AI. And it's only 4% in the entirety of Europe. What was really nice and interesting for the location Germany is that of these 4%, 30% are actually located in Germany. And I think that's good news for the location Germany and the Standort.
Also, partly for this ecosystem, which has made AI a super important topic already 8 years ago, empowering startups to leverage AI, empowering innovative companies to leverage AI, and now since 3 years ago with Circular Republic, also a topic of circularity. And at least I'd like to tell myself that this is part of the blossom that comes here, that now in terms of AI leverage by circular economy startup, that's one point where Germany is already leading.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead, Leo, we might test that with the audience, I think.
This one?
No, the next one.
The next one. Yeah, let's go. Let's test you. We had a look at the value chain, right? What's the test?
We looked at the different topics circular economy startups are driving. Some are doing regenerative materials, circular inputs. And we had great examples up there. Protec, for example. We have startups like we've seen that do automated disassembly. Many of you might have seen the pitch from Circuline doing robots that disassemble batteries. And we were wondering how many are active in each sector.
Yep.
How many do you think do regenerative materials? What also is happening in the materials lab up there, growing stuff from battery cells and stuff. Who thinks it's 10% or more? Who thinks it's 20% or more? I was amazed. It's almost 30% of startups in Europe that do regenerative materials.
And there's a couple of other surprising things, right? While we're super strong with the beginning of the loop, right? There's a lot of substitution, there's a lot of bio-based inputs in the startup world. There is a tremendous lack of crucial steps in closing material loops. There is basically no refinement happening. There is basically no automated or general disassembly happening. Talked about this with Rebecca from Circular, and they're happy that they have no competition at this point. And there's a couple of other things that are underdeveloped. So there's still a lot of room, and if you want to found a startup, maybe think about refinement. Then there's one last analysis that we did. We had a look at the industry and sort of divided it into 4 different areas. And of course, everybody wants to be in a hotspot. There's where a lot of startups are and the most funding is. Untapped horizons, on the contrary, is a little number of startups and basically no funding. And this is what we found. Matze, what are we seeing here?
So, I mean, where you want to be as a startup is on the bottom right? It's blue ocean. A lot of funding, but not too many startups. And there we see most of the energy and the clean energy topics. Batteries, mobility, etc. Waste management is a hotspot, definitely. And what I find interesting, we had a lot of textile startups here today, super innovative solutions. It's just on the edge to being competitive. So not yet sufficient funding, a lot to achieve if we put more money, especially into those spaces.
So pretty interesting. Also interesting that most of the critical raw materials things are in the blue ocean. Little startups, a lot of funding. So that's an interesting place to be. The question now is, how do we get all the startups in the untapped horizon towards the blue ocean or the hotspot? And I think an important element of that is collaboration, right?
That's where our share ends with exactly that question. How do you get from untapped horizon to blue ocean? How do you introduce especially collaboration as an answer to that?
And we would love to introduce Tina and Christina from Better Ventures.
Who worked with us for weeks and months this year to think deeply about exactly that question. Please give a warm hand to Tina and Christina.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for the second collaboration on the circularity report. It's our pleasure to be part of it. Firstly, who doesn't know Better Ventures? We started in times of Corona because we are convinced that entrepreneurs are the driving force to build a better world, and we should make each other succeed. By now, we already unite over 100 proven entrepreneurs and also leading industry giants to invest directly early stage into impact entrepreneurs. And that not only gives us access to the best teams and knowledge that no early stage fund, even the best early stage fund, can compete with, but it also gives us great interview partners, and we always try to stay ahead of the game by talking to our members about what the biggest problems are, what their challenges are, and how we can solve them together. And we conducted over 30 interviews with leading industry giants, companies, particularly family enterprises. And one thing was a common theme. It's that startups are not a fun experiment anymore. It's not just a playground, a hobby I'm working with, no. But for many of the bigger companies, they have become a survival strategy. Why? Because given all the crises you showed earlier, the pressure along the entire value chain is rising. Not only do we need energy and resource transformation, but we also need to transform digitally and lack talent. So many of the bigger companies now need this acceleration, be close to innovation in order to stay ahead of the game and particularly also strengthen their center, their core business. I imagine that since you are all here, that you already tapped into this potential. So also to get more interactive, who is a startup? Who is a larger enterprise working with startups? And who's an investor in that field? See, so I'm here to say thank you because you're part of the solution. So do more of it. We need to scale fast. You know, many of our planetary boundaries are urgent. If you're here to step into the field with us, here's the chance to do so. Firstly, of course, you can start collaborating with startups to learn from them, to be close to innovation. Secondly, if you want to participate in the upside as well, there's a way to invest early into them, and it also is an advantage for larger enterprises to build their own M&A pipeline, and we highly recommend to do so. But why?
Why are these partnerships so valuable? It's because where the one side has its challenges, the other side fills the gaps. So enterprises, typically known for greater decision barriers, processes might be slower. They're the ones with linear economy practices, and they might have a hard time attracting talent. That's where the startups step in with their modern, faster approach. They're the ones with the innovative circular solutions and the expertise within the circular economy, and they can be attractive for talent acquisition. The same thing goes the other way. So startups that are pretty new in the market might have limited resources, and enterprises can really support them here with their market tenure. All in all, this is a win-win situation because enterprises reach their circular economy goals faster, and startups validate themselves within the market. They gain first customers, and for us as co-investors, this is great because the startup really validates that there's a customer need, and they already have strong advisors and a network on board. So large players are noticing that these partnerships are crucial to advance their circular economy practices. Beyond that, really engaging in this drives economic success and positions them as leaders within sustainability. Here you see some voices. And in general, at Better Ventures, we look at a specific use case. That's family enterprises. They're positioned uniquely because they're a crossover or a connector between this industry and the innovation. So they typically have entrepreneurial mindsets, they have a commitment to a long-term goal, they have a sense of responsibility, they offer hands-on support, and they can typically invest in the early stages. So that's why it's particularly interesting to us. So we talked to some of these for the report to kind of understand what actually makes a successful collaboration. And so here we just have a few key components that enterprises and startups should really look out for. So first of all, for the enterprises, it's important to lay the groundwork to really make sure that there's an internal structure to even engage in collaboration, then that you have clear goals within, you have a defined problem space that you're working with. Then when it comes to the partnership itself, you want to make sure both parties are approaching each other at the right time, that the startup is actually able to engage in a partnership like this, that there's also an operational and a cultural fit. At the end of the day, these are people working together, so you have to make sure that your working modes align well, and also that your expectations are set correctly. And then at the end of the day, you want to make sure that there's mutual value within this collaboration, so that both come out on a plus. So here are some of the family enterprises that we talked to, some of the startups that they've partnered with and or invested in that might be familiar, and you can read more about that in the report. And then we just want to leave you off with some aspects that will help you avoid common pitfalls when you go into a collaboration like this. So on the one hand, on the enterprise side, you really want to have a commitment to a long-term collaboration and or investment strategy. That's super important, as well as an internal structure to make fast decisions. This will really help you get to the best teams. This is crucial for it. Then you also want to make sure you have individuals within that are the champions of these collaborations. These are people that have both that entrepreneurial mindset and the understanding of the industry, because they're really the ones who are going to advance these partnerships, so you don't want to overlook that. Then also that you take the time to match these cultures, these values between the people that you're working with. Just like us investors, we make sure that our values align with the founders we invest in, because we know it's a longer-term partnership. And then at the end of the day, to pull it all together, just a disciplined collaboration approach. This means setting the guidelines, setting the goals ahead of time, and also having check-ins to make sure you're on the right path. Then on the startup side, you really want to make sure that you as a startup have an understanding for the industry that you're entering in, also understanding for more traditional structures, to not go in thinking everything is set up like a startup. So really coming in with that understanding. Then another aspect, you've heard it before, I'll say it again, focusing on the customer problem. This is crucial to be able to help these larger enterprises. Then also taking a step back, perhaps considering if you're solving too many things at once, so reduction in the complexity can really help. And lastly, being open to what these partnerships can bring you. So be that cross-industry use cases, or also considering that these partnerships can lead to investments further down the line. So to really get the biggest value out of these partnerships, you have professional partners at your hands, such as us or the TUM ecosystem. Yeah, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. So that's why you want to get working on it now.
Get working on it now, and we want you to be successful because it's crucial to transform the economy. And that's why you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all out there. The problem spaces for entrepreneurs who want to go into the field, and you just learned it's an attractive field. And second, also the successful collaborators and large enterprises who've mastered how to collaborate and also invest into the early stage to profit, and together we will all come out on top and have more fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us, stay with us. Matze, don't you want to join? Thank you so much. And maybe you see that we, like, the word collaboration means something to us. Everything that you see is collaboration between basically 6 organizations, right?
Maybe everyone who collaborated with this piece, who is still in the room, might raise a hand.
Stand up. Stand up, guys.
Wow, thank you. It's
quite a few. One round of applause for.
It was hundreds of days of data crunching, also like from TUM Venture Labs, from Better Ventures, Unternehmertum, Circular Republic, that went into this. Also, we leveraged AI quite a bit.
Yes, we did. So we thought we now have this treasure, 2,500 startups in a database, really well structured. How can we use that to facilitate collaboration? And we thought, let's look at a real case on stage and see how we leverage AI, how we leverage the database to solve real investment problems. I would love to welcome Inga from BMW I Ventures to talk about an actual case with you on stage.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for having me, and it's a real pleasure to follow your landscape, and I'm really curious to see what we figure out later on, because I have the pleasure just to share some insights about where it's a green one, right? So
yeah, the green was the right one.
How we build bridges. So bring value through investments is the one side, but also for us at BMW Ventures, headquartered in San Francisco and Munich, from the first perspective, we are looking like how we can support from a investment perspective, not only in the US, also in Europe along. And from the other side, and this is why I really love my previous speakers about the collaboration, I think this is super crucial. How can we support our portfolio companies along beside the investment we are doing? So as BMW Ventures, we have 800 million asset under management and mainly focused investing in Series A and B and follow-on investments. Just to give you a small sense and why we are here today is, beside the mobility industry, we are seeking in 6 investment fields. So we are looking for technologies along car development. This can be like battery technologies, sensors, or new materials in sense of covering sensors or radars. Then we have smart productions, where we are looking for new technologies along which makes the production safer, easier, faster, hopefully circular as well. And supply chain, I mean, from the beginning, looking for rare earth materials. We are looking from Germany to US to Europe across the landscape for solutions along the supply chain. And we will see one case later on where we look in the circular economy. Digital sales and services, where we see for digital services and aftermarket sales places. And IT and sustainability, I think they are crucial. We just heard it about today, what AI has an influence in all these specific fields. So it's not like a matrix and touch all the different fields and from an investment perspective. And just to see, hopefully, not our landscape, because I just want to give you an insight, but
imagine a landscape here.
No worry. Imagine you see a world landscape, so I take this slide instead of that, because I just want to share that we see how we have now differentiated when we have invested and started at BMW Ventures back in 2011. Since now, we see it from our first fund, where we have a concentration in the US market, so we have mainly 90% investment in North America, comparison to 10% in Europe. But now, since a couple of years, and then, of course, thank you of all the Unternehmertum and what happened here in Munich and in Germany, we see a shift in this case. So in our second fund, we now have a penetration US against like 65% to 35% investments in Europe. So this is just a small collection out of that. We had made more than 80 investments in total and have 60 active along the mobility and circular economy. So whenever you have interesting companies, we are really open to discuss the next potential, but now we are super curious to understand what we showcase today in sense of maybe find a new circular topic, not only in US, also geographically, maybe a counterpart in the Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, that's massive, Inga, right? That's like just highlighting the message that you said in one sentence. A major fund with 800 million under management, shift and with a special focus on circularity tech in the material-heavy mobility industry, now shifting investments massively to Europe, right? And that's what we also saw in the landscape previously.
Yeah, and we see that we have now an ecosystem here, right? So we can invest where we have an ecosystem. The one thing is to have the money in the pockets, but on the other side, to have the great ideas and that we see the great ideas curves in the market.
Let's find you some startups here.
Yeah,
For
so
sure. sorry.
No worries. If you go back for a second, there is one startup in particular that we wanted to talk about, right? Cyclic
Yes.
Materials. And you wanted to look for a double in Europe. Why is that, and what are they doing at this point?
Yeah, we just picked Cyclic Materials out of the wonderful landscape here. It's a Canadian-based company. What they are doing is out of rare earth materials, and specific in this case, they are circular magnetics out of batteries or other topics on this field. And we see right now only 1% of the total batteries are recycled. And why only doing this overseas? Can we have some kind of that solution over here as well? So I think this is now not only about the geographical discussion to find a pendant here in Europe in this case.
And that was exactly the question that sort of brought us together, right?
Sure.
Because at this point, we started basically building, based on the landscape and the database that we have, a startup intelligence tool that helps us to answer these questions more efficiently, right?
Yeah.
And I'm super proud to say that we walk the talk. We partnered with a startup, DISO and VentureOS. They basically provide the AI power to run the tool. And we prepared a little demo, basically inputting your data. And what we built together with them and with their technology is a chatbot, the VentureOS chatbot by DISO, that runs on our data set. And now let's just ask a couple of questions, I would say. And I would say it's demo time, and let's have a look at the LLM that we're using. So what you see right here, and maybe I'll use the laser point, that's a rather complex prompt. We wanted to make sure that everything works for today. We're asking, so Cyclic Materials, we just said how to do it, retrieve the 200 most funded startups in these areas, specifically in the car industry, what are the relevance filters, so on and so forth. And then there's a couple of beautification. We want a matrix and so on and so forth. So the algorithm knows how everything should look like. I think we can just send it away. And here's the question that we really asked, right? So we said, right now, it's very North America heavy. Let's strengthen the supply chain resilience and see if there are startups that are in Europe and do similar things, right? And then there's a specific focus on the startup Cyclic Materials, a Canada-based startup, and the question really was, they're doing rare earth magnets, right?
Right. Yeah.
So is there somebody in Europe that is doing a similar job, right? So that's basically the question that we now ask our database, and with the tool developed by DISO, we're able to really quickly produce a first glance, right? Understand who's doing what, getting a first overview, and I would love to discuss a couple of the findings. I mean, maybe we can just go through what we see.
It's always great to see portfolio companies on the list. Then I can say we did something right on this end, right? But also to see different companies out of. I mean, I didn't know that Spain is looking for companies like that. So it's super interesting to understand how the ecosystem is now running here in Europe, and that we have a lot of ideas running. I think our investment team will now have to do a lot of research on this end.
Yeah, and you get quite a lot of information, right? You get this sort of high-level summary and information, what's going on, what are you looking for, and then these matrices, right? The focus area, which material are they focusing on? Really interesting, also substitutes, right?
Absolutely.
Rare earth-free solutions might be the most resilient solution if we can forget about the rare earth at some point. You see the American market and you see the key findings, right? Europe is really good in technology, but the US is still very much stronger in funding, right? The Europeans tend to get afraid after the first couple of funding rounds, and then the Americans take over. Maybe that changes with a couple of the bigger players switching to Europe. And then you see the suggestions, right?
Yeah.
Direct doubles for the company, and then also complementary solutions. So that's Matze.
Great.
That is way more than you can get with traditional AI. I mean, you could ask the same question to ChatGPT. Please tell us, dear ChatGPT, please tell me what are doubles to the cyclic material startups in Europe. And it will provide you with some answers, which is maybe also 50% or 70% of what you find here. But we tested it in many industries and across the different sectors. There is a real value in the training we provided this specific chatbot with. We had, 7 rounds with hundreds of startups where we tested and gave the definition for each startup and for circular economy to the chatbot and trained it again. So that's a Circular Republic TUM Venture Lab trained chatbot now that identifies circular economy startups in Europe, and which we plan, that was on the previous slide,
Yes.
to make open to everyone, because we want those European startups to thrive and be found by the companies.
Exactly. And I think there's one more thing to say. It is really the combination of partners here, right? And maybe you can join us on stage here, because without the organizations that you see here and the people, and there is so many more. Maybe you can still again stand up, because it was such a push over the last weeks to get all of that done. Thank you so much for the amazing collaboration. Thank you to Diesel with your amazing technology and Venture OS. Thank you to Net Zero Insights. Thank you to Laura and the team from Unternehmertum for supporting with all the amazing insights. It wouldn't have been possible, and I think that shows how important collaboration is sometimes. Yep, and that was
Great afternoon.